Now, obviously, the question is then.
Just isn't interesting. That's the problem. If you're not from those places, that's just the way the world works, isn't it?
Obviously, the question.
Whacking a pinata awesome. It's not my shit. Just the way the world works, isn't it?
The question, though, is like, is this the right way? And we'll bridge this into the format topic, because is there a way to get this viewership? Because I think part of it is the allure of these minor region teams and seeing what they can do against the major region teams. Like, I think the local fans of these teams want to see that. But I'm not sure that this is the best way to facilitate that. I would rather have like what you have with the Worlds play-in, where like the best of those teams then get to show off against the kind of better, the seeds from the better regions, if you know what I mean.
The first matches are going to be more even, like the play-in, because that's what happens in the play-in, isn't it? Like, aside from the only problem in the play-in is because you have a team from Korea and China going as well. They wouldn't be in this phase, is what Monte's talking about. Obviously, you would separate them out. And so instead, think about this. You're right, Monte. Basically, let's imagine a world where I'm not sure how you'd make the line. So let's just be really generous to LCS and say, I'll just make the line. LCK and LPL are the ones that get to skip. I won't make Europe skip and do the whole EU over and anything, right? So let's imagine G2 and EG are in a play-in against all these other teams, right? Yes, we now know G2 would have stomped everyone. But actually, EG and all those other games, those would be close games, or they'd be interesting games, or they'd have, like, there'd even be the factor, like, I'll give you an example. When we were doing our predictions, like, it actually turned out the Turkish team did lose to the Brazilian team. You know, there would have been way more parity in the games, yeah. And then obviously you can just do the really good part of the tournament later. Like, to me, another reason why you need to get rid of, like, here's the problem with this tournament. If I'm running the tournament, it will only begin at the Rumble stage. If they're running the tournament, it has to have the play-in angle, right? Let's not just marry the two together. Have some sort of a play-in angle, and certain teams get out, and then just have a massive double elim bracket. Instead of a Rumble.
And this is the same thing that we talked about coming into this event about what would be more exciting, is just having a massive bracket, right?
Wouldn't that be so cool? They could meet twice. Oh, it's so awesome.
Right. And because I feel like the most... it's hard to argue, because T1's matches were so popularly watched. Like, they were the most on average, like they had the most highest average concurrent viewers of all the matches. So like, clearly people want to see T1 play no matter what team they're playing against. I mean,
this scenario, they play more games in the playoffs, though, Monte, so that would even out.
Right. But I think the main issue with this format for me is that we don't have answers to questions that I would really like, such as what happens when DFM meets Red Canids, right? Which looked like probably the two best teams that didn't make it. And like, I would genuinely like to see
a low bracket match, a
best of 5 between these two teams.
Exactly.
I would like to see that.
Yes.
So the problem is like, yes, with this format, you do get like kind of a mid-tier team against good teams and then a bad team, but you never get to see like the mid-tier teams against other kind of mid-tier teams. You could argue that Saigon Buffalo and DFM are approximately the same. I think DFM should have won the second game that those two teams played. They threw it, but I think like those to me are the most interesting matches that I would like to not see in a best of 1, but a best of 5. And that way you could have
do it TI style, dude. You could have just had the teams that didn't get in the top placings be in the lower bracket and then play the game you want.
But I think
that's the argument against what you said earlier. You're right. Apparently, if you look at the numbers, they did get viewership up from those minor regions. But here's the problem, Monte. You also just told me if T1 plays anyone, it gets all the viewers. Guess what? I would like T1 to play 10 times in a fucking playoff, not once. Like, that doesn't, logically, that doesn't make sense, Riot. If you could recreate that 8 times, why do it twice? You know what I mean? Like, that's the part where it doesn't make sense. You've done it to this level, but you could blow the roof off.
I do think you need to give all of the teams like a second life and not do it TI style. Like I said, I would.
What do you mean? Why didn't it have a second life?
Oh, because I would put them all in the upper bracket. Start with everybody in the upper bracket.
Look, in the bracket, you don't get a second life, but you already played in the other stage. That was your first life, mate. You fucked that up already.
I would just not have a group stage. That's what I'm saying. I would just not have a group stage. I would just have a giant bracket, like a 16-team bracket or an 8-team bracket. I guess you could do like an 8-team upper bracket with 4 teams seeded into the lower bracket. That would be another option. But I think, which would probably be the best if they want 12
So
teams.
Remember, people might not know this. TI didn't have the exact same format. They actually experimented with a lot of different brackets. They even had like MLG style brackets where you just get 4 teams in an upper bracket and everyone goes through an enormous lot. So you could also do a world, by the way, if people don't know, where we have this bracket, but maybe the top teams from the group go to like a top semis or whatever, upper bracket final, and these other teams are also in the upper bracket, but they start earlier. They just play like a couple of matches to get into that. Yeah, you can do that as well.
What you do is you do the 3 groups of 4, you do the double best of 1 round robin, and then the bottom team in each group is automatically eliminated.
There you go.
And then, I'm sorry, two of the teams. Or no, you could just do it with all the teams. Actually, you just put four teams. You just put the 4 teams in the lower bracket, and so it'd be 1 third place team would be in the lower bracket, right? But that third place team would just be either the one with the worst winning percentage, so it'd be like a 1 in 5 team or whatever. And then if they're tied in terms of wins losses, you play a tiebreaker for who's in the upper bracket and who's in the lower bracket as the 8th seed in the upper bracket. So it's pretty easy. It's actually very easy to figure out. And then from there, you just have those teams, waiting in the losers bracket. So the loser of the first round goes and plays all of the bottom 4 seeds of the tournament. And then you play a double elimination bracket. That would immediately be a better format than what's at MSI. So you just eliminate the Rumble stage entirely, and you do one group stage into a 12-team double elim bracket with 4 teams waiting in the lower bracket. So I fixed it already. There you go.
Secret is, guess what? We've already run the experiment, boys. It's in all the other esports games. Just go look at it. Just go look at the history of the esport. That's the worst thing. People don't realize why it's so frustrating to me. I did watch 20 years and chronicle it like history, and then there's people just keep coming along like, I'm just going to invent esports. Like, oh, I've already done it, you idiots. Listen.
I mean, the other option would be to do 4 groups of 3 and do double round robin. But the thing is, there are probably going to be a lot of tiebreakers in that scenario.
Round robin's a nightmare for tiebreakers anyway.
Well, but especially the fewer teams you have in a group, the more likely tiebreakers occur. Because the problem with League of Legends formats, guys, is because it's not like Counter-Strike or like Valorant or like Rainbow Six. There isn't a round differential as a tiebreaker. And the issue with having time or objectives or champion kills as a tiebreaker is if you choose a scaling composition and you want to play a longer game, you can play a flawless game that you're simply not going to win as fast as somebody who plays a flawless game with a faster composition.
There's not a strong correlation between game time and how good the team was. Yeah, exactly.
And it's not like there aren't problems with that in Counter-Strike. Like if there's a CT-sided map and one team starts CT side and like gets a bunch of rounds, you could have a very low round differential, even though one team was like disadvantaged at the start because of the map itself. So it's not perfect in Counter-Strike, but it is a fuck ton better because both teams have the opportunity to play both sides of the map in every single game. So even if it's CT-sided, you get the advantage at some point in time. So it's better. And it also leads to fewer tiebreak scenarios where you have to play a tiebreaker match. It will never get away from that in League of Legends, where a tie score will mean you have to play a tiebreaker match. It's the only way to do it in this game. So yeah, I think that's the main takeaway here. And as we look at these format options, there are ways, because the goal should be, it's clear from viewership metrics that top teams against minor region teams do produce viewership. So you don't want to get rid of that, but you also want to be able to have kind of like a minor region rumble where there are elimination matches in a best of 5 played between minor regions, because that's just interesting. Like, I would like to know who the best minor region team is. Like, I want to know whether it's PSG Talon or, the Saigon Buffalo or Detonation Focus Me, or like these teams. I want to know which could make it the furthest, deepest run in the lower bracket. That's really fun for me. And I think that's what's lacking.
Sure.
So I don't know. It seems like the overall excitement has faded about this format, and that there are many, many other things that could be done within this situation. Again, guys, I'll leave the link below the YouTube video to the ES Charts article, so you guys can look it up yourself. I'll just go ahead and drop it in Twitch chat right now for you. But yeah. And then also, I mean, obviously the level of hype heading into this tournament was very low. We didn't really, the hype trailer they released had a bunch of teams that weren't even attending MSI. Also, the name MSI is both boring and a lie, because teams aren't invited, they qualify. So that doesn't even make any fucking sense. Like, an invitational is when you select teams and invite them to an event, a tournament.
That would be a great idea.
That would be a great idea.
Wouldn't it? Yeah. That would actually be a better idea.
It's not a tournament that you get an automatic seed in by qualifying within your region. That's not an invitational. Like, Riot doesn't understand what words mean.
And also, technically, RNG didn't even accept the invite. They didn't even come. Just saying words and that, Fuck words, right? Just saying.
So Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing is pretty like clearly broken. I hope they'll fix it, but we've been hoping they would. Like, it was obvious this tournament was bad for hardcore fans of the game when it was announced. It's a tragedy because it's one of 2 international events that we have every year. We don't get to see that much international competition, and it's a fucking letdown that we have 3 best of 5s only at the second most important tournament of the year. It shouldn't be like that.
You know, Monty, that this format actually sucks, because here's the problem, right? If you can have a scenario where either one team not attending cripples the competitive integrity of tournament, or on top of that, like we had, if an underdog like EG qualifies, that also fucks the tournament interest and means that suddenly you're now down to 3 teams that can potentially do anything. That's just a sign, by the way, that format was only surviving by you getting lucky and the best teams all qualifying, and then there not being these problems. If people don't know, when you have a brilliant format, like the reason the TI format to me has just shown itself to be the best, it's because it doesn't even matter who qualifies for TI, Monty. It's amazing every single year. It doesn't even matter who goes out. Like, if people don't know, in TIs, sometimes the best team in the world has gone out like 7th to 8th, and the tournament was still fucking amazing. Can you even imagine MSI if T1 went out in the fucking Rumble stage, that anyone would give a fuck about MSI or go, it was one of the greatest of all? No one would care. No one would care. So that, in my opinion, a good structure supports so many more, like, different varied fields, underdogs making it. Unfortunately, the problem with the Riot system, it's the same in Worlds itself, is you're just relying on sort of the teams to fix it for you by just being amazingly good and sort of the wrong teams not winning the games, as it were. I'm not a fan of that in general, because as anyone knows, the worst feeling ever when you have a thing like this where you've waited 6 months for Worlds is you're waiting for that amazing quarters match, and then 1BO1 bullshit tiebreaker ruins it, and you're like, I'll just wait. I guess I'll wait another year. Oh no, I won't, because those teams won't be the same then. I've missed my one chance to see this game. That sucks. And also, you notice they still haven't created it, Monty. Of all the things they refuse to do, they refuse to allow a format in which Europeans and Americans can play each other without being better than Korea or China. That second part of the sentence is what makes it functionally impossible, you idiots. There was one team ever in the history of League of Legends. I mean, you could maybe count Fnatic as well. There's 2 teams ever we've had in the modern era that could even do that, and they were the greatest to ever play. Like, again, you're asking teams to make the format good. You make the format good. You're Riot. Make it so that somehow they meet in a best of 5. I'm telling you, that would have been such a great game every single year of League of Legends. Even now, by the way, sure, the group stage ruined it because they played all those games, but the real G5, EGB, BO5, who wouldn't have watched that at the beginning of MSI? Right. That would be great.
And this is one of the things we talked about in the last show, hyping it up, is like, this is the opportunity here for G2 versus EG. In a way, I liked the quad round robin because we got a proxy best of 5, except there was like days off or like a few hours off in the case of the last 2 games to make adjustments. So it was kind of like a best of 5, 4 games in this case, spread out over a number of days, which made for very interesting strategies and like ability to try new things and create set plays. And this was a cool opportunity to see NA versus EU, because as a reminder, guys, there has been one NA versus EU match in the last 3 years. There's been one best of 5 in 3 years.
Do you know the reason why, Monty? Because not only did G2 beat fucking Fakers T1, but fucking Jensen had to beat Rookies World Championship IG for that game to take place. Spoiler, that's never going to happen again. That was a unicorn, boys. And then obviously, well, Monty, we get one, and it's the worst, by definition, the worst best of 5 probably in those 3 years among top teams. Because that was the record breaking, fucking speed run home or whatever for NA, wasn't it? That TL one. It was garbage.
Yeah. So, guys, it is disappointing, and we could see more of these if they would just. If they had a losers bracket, we would see more of them, and it would be really fun to watch these matches and really fun to talk about them. But we can't have nice things. So this is the closest we're going to get. It was disappointing. Well, if you're EG, it was kind of awesome to watch G2. I'm not going to lie. It gave me a lot of hope for them. There's a non-zero chance they can win this tournament, I would say.
There is. And also, I want to say this as well. This is going to be controversial because, spoiler, I just say what I think, and if you don't think the same way to me, spoiler, you don't even have a brain that works the same as mine. You're not going to have the same thoughts. Just a little fucking margin note there. So here's what I'm going to say right now. Mate, you know G2, what was the streak that they're on now? It's
20?
Yeah, they've won 20 BO1s, not BO1s, they've won 20 games of league in a row, right? Now, true, 4 were against Order, right? So of that 20, if you want, take 4 off, make it 16, but you can still do it 20, right? That means, though, remember, because it started in the playoffs, Monty, all the other games were against Fnatic twice, Rogue, fucking, who was the other one? Misfits, and then now they did EG, right?
The NA champion, the number one NA team.
These are all top teams, right? Here's the statement that people won't understand. In a very specific context, that's actually more impressive than T1's undefeated run in Korea because theirs was series.
Yep.
Theirs was series. I'm not joking. This is what people won't understand when I make this statement, Monty. So whatever, I'll say it. If you actually did put T1 in the same scenario, you can't guarantee they would win 20 games in a row because it's League of Legends. Anyone can lose a BO1. Anyone. By the way, spoiler, even G2 Sorbus lost some of these games in the domestic region, obviously, and obviously they did lose some otherwise. Oh, I shouldn't have said Fnatic twice. Obviously, they lost the first one there. But you get my point.
Yeah. But yes, obviously G2 struggled at the start of the LEC playoffs, but once they
that is insane to win 20 games in a row, and especially this competition. That is nuts, actually. That is really impressive. I'm serious.
Yeah, especially because it was the caliber of competition. It didn't happen in the regular season. It happened in the playoffs. It happened in best of series. Best of series, oftentimes you're trying to be experimental or like take a shot on some picks, knowing that you have a cushion of losses that you can kind of lean against if the worst comes to pass. And they haven't had any of that. And even nonsense games like the last game between EG and G2, which literally meant nothing. There was no incentive for them to win. They still won. So I want to wrap up the format talk, and then we'll have a conversation about the games and the teams. The format, as Thorin alluded to, is a point that I made on Twitter, which is that the format is fundamentally broken if the competitive integrity can be destroyed by one team. And in this case, and people will say, oh, it's not RNG's fault. It's when I say one team, I mean the seed guys. Yes. I mean, whoever represents that seed, because Korea and China, the number one in Korea and Chinese seeds have inordinate amounts of power because the tournament cannot happen without them, which means you have created a bad format. If the tournament is unwatchable without either of these two teams participating, then these teams can bend rules and competitive integrity to suit them. They can hold the event hostage, knowing that they are.
If they did that, obviously hypothetically, but imagine if they did, it'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
And I'm not saying that they are intentionally doing this. I'm not trying to accuse RNG of any malfeasance in this situation, but their scenario bends the world of competitive integrity in their favor. Right.
You know what? We need to start actually leaning into memes, Monty. So now that we get a little bit of funding with our company, I'm going to do stuff like this is a joke, obviously. I'm going to actually, in true Korean tradition, I'm going to actually pay for a wreath to be delivered to the network engineers of Riot for this tournament. Just, thought I'd join in, get in the spirit, right? Why not?
Yeah, the old Korean memes.
I love that.
So when we're talking about this, guys, if you make a different comparison. So for example, if one Chinese seed didn't attend Worlds, we still have a good tournament. If all 3 Chinese teams don't attend Worlds, we still have a good tournament because the Korean teams are at least competitive with each other. The problem is that you have made a format so bad and the winner so obvious from the get-go without something totally unexpected happening. And by the way, something can totally unexpected happen even if you have a good tournament.
Yeah, of course.
G2 and Fnatic made World Finals. Nobody fucking predicted that,
exactly.
Right? And so you cannot have formats where you can't design things where the power of competitive integrity is now in the hands of the teams as opposed to the tournament organizer. It is the fatal flaw within the format of MSI, and it needs to be changed so that this can't continue to happen. Because
what would you think of this? What if for Worlds, you just gave the major regions 4 slots each, but MSI is the top 2?
Yeah.
So it's a mini Worlds, but it's not Worlds, still not Worlds. It won't count the same as Worlds, but it means that if RNG does bad, the other team does well. Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be a very good tournament, I think.
Yeah, and also if China couldn't attend, you would still have at least 2 Korean teams there. I wouldn't mind seeing like a T1 Genji rematch in the finals of MSI. Like it would not ruin my experience to have that. If Korea couldn't attend, it wouldn't ruin my experience to have like the RNG top rematch, right? Because
then technically NA could finish 7th to 8th at MSI. That wasn't why I crafted that, guys. That wasn't like, I didn't reverse engineer that to create that scenario. That's just a happy coincidence, wasn't it? You know, which again, just renamed to Not Invitational, the mid-season qualification tournament. How about that? That's a pretty good name, isn't it? Yeah.
MQT. How about you just give it a fucking name? This is what I don't understand. Mid-season Invitational has no prestige to it. Like, I don't even understand why it's called Worlds. Why isn't it just called the Summoner's Cup?
Oh, no, I'm with you, mate. Here's what I don't get why they've done this, because I think it's very silly. Admittedly, in tennis, it's not like they agreed this. This just happened to be how it worked out. Like, obviously, originally in tennis, Wimbledon was the World Championship, wasn't it, right? But in the modern day, there is actually some degree of parity between the 4 Grand Slams. And so I actually think it's silly, mate, to just throw this tournament away. But like, as you're saying, it's sort of like, it's not quite counts as a Worlds, half Worlds, but it's not Worlds. Like, why are you devaluing the second tournament? Like, why not just have 2 tournaments with a different theme, like you're saying, and
different fucking name?
Cool, yeah. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, just call it after the trophy, or like brand it in a different way. So it's just so confusing to me that they think this sounds prestigious. Like, I feel like if you rebranded MSI as the Dragon Showdown, that's a stupid name, but that's just an example, right? You give it a particular branding that is unique to itself, that has an aesthetic to it. It also feels more prestigious to win it. And you don't have to look. Worlds is a dumb name, but it's not as dumb as MSI by like a long shot. And you can keep Worlds because it just says what it is. The World Championship has the most prestige, but at least you create some sub event that isn't just mid-season invitation. Like, who thought of that? That is so horrific. Just call it something. Give it some weight to it. Give it some meaning. It's just completely it doesn't. It's not even what it says it is. It's not an invitational. Mid-season makes it sound like it's trivial because it sounds like you're putting it within the context of the season. So it's just like, it says that the season is more important and mid-season is just this halfway point. By the way, for at least for Americans, all you think about is fucking All-Stars, which is meaningless, which happens in the middle of sports seasons.
Dude, imagine if they really did that as well. They were like, it's the mid-season tournament. I'm the champion. Yeah, but who won the end of the season? Yeah, but I was the mid-season. No one gives a fuck, mate. And then, like, that's just mad in itself, innit? I know. Why even bother? Also, by the way, along the lines, because we never brought this up, but this is actual. Like, the use of these words hurts my brain, Monty. How can there be the mid-season invitational? And you know they rebranded the LCS playoffs for spring as the mid-season showdown. Can you just get the fuck out of my mind? You're just violating words in my mind. Like, what are you? You're doing the words dirtier than you do the fucking teams in these tournaments, boys. Like, that's so dumb. Because already, by the way, you do know technically, Monty, in some sense, showdown almost sounds better than invitational, but it's just the LCS playoffs, and it's only LCS has that. Why is only LCS got a mid-season go? Why is Europe just the playoffs? What are we doing here? What are we doing with words? Why have words become so silly? I want to know.
Riot is a crime against the English language.
I know it is, isn't it?
And we've already talked about the irony, because the fact that they're called Riot makes it sound like they're all about chaos and like upsetting the status quo, when they are just like the most authoritarian, single-minded, cultish company you have ever seen in your life, where any dissent is immediately cracked down upon. They're like the SWAT team busting up some protesters, dude. Any protester immediately just gets a club to the knees, and they're like, but we're Riot, guys. We're Riot. It's just the branding is so terrible.
I'm with you on the name Riot being terrible, but the actual massive red fist, because it just buys into the actual Orwell quote, doesn't it? Like, you want a vision of the future, an e-sport MOBA, motherfucker? A giant red fist smashing you in the face over and over and over while trying to cheers. Like, what the fuck? Why have you got that branding? Like, just make it like a fucking pigeon or something cool. You know, like, what? What are we doing? This is mental. It's two on the nose, boys.
I mean, they could have kept the red.
That's what I just think when I see that fist. It's like, give me a break. And also, if you're just all bros, maybe a massive fist ain't really the answer, you know, again. Also not the answer.
The frat boy fist bumping, probably not the cultural image that you want to portray right now. They could have just kept the color red and just had their logo be a cup of Kool-Aid, which would be much more, you know, in keeping with the tone of the company. Gotta drink it to join.
I mean, listen, everyone who goes to these tournaments has to drink the Kool-Aid. Like I said earlier, some of the aforementioned people I named, like, I apologise for criticising something that I didn't realise was related to China and not normal reality. Like, give me a break. All right, mate, yeah, okay. I understand you want to live, and you do live there, so fair enough. You do what you got to do, mate. You do what you got to do, I guess. Ain't for me.
Well, that will do it with our extremely long rant about all the ping issues, all of the format issues, all of the competitive integrity rematch issues. Honestly, this was the bread and butter of MSI. The sad thing is the tournament's been so shit that this is actually the most interesting and pertinent parts about this is what went wrong and what needs to change, because the games themselves were boring and dog shit for the most part. And also because of the ping issues, because of the practice issues, because of the gap in competitive ability within the teams, we can't even really speculate about what's coming up in the next stage because we don't even think teams were playing for real, or they couldn't play for real because the practice environment wasn't giving them the opportunity to really, align what was going on in practice with what could happen on stage. So it's a whole hot mess.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.